Hey, everybody. Welcome. This is Matt Gillogly. And today what I'm going to talk about in our group is I'm going to talk about the second gap that exists in your medical practice. So a couple weeks ago, what I did was I posted a concept of there's a gap that exists in your medical practice. Okay. And what this gap is that if you have this much revenue, okay, you really have this much potential. And this gap that exists is pretty significant in your medical practice. And the reason why this gap is significant is it creates a situation where you're kind of like a dog chasing its tail. Okay. If you have this large gap of revenue in your business, what generally is happening from, I would say, 95% of practices that I review and I work with is they have a gap. They have this much revenue coming in from, say, transactions, but they have this much potential. And what this gap creates is this gap creates all this lost revenue. And this is easy lost revenue. And this is, frankly, not just revenue, but these are procedures and items that can help benefit your patient as well. So this isn't just about making money, it's about serving the patient as well. So what I want to talk to you about today is last week I spoke about the gap, the follow-up gap. Okay, so if you haven't watched that video, go back and watch that one. But today, what I'm going to talk to you about is I'm going to talk about the transaction gap. Okay, so here is what the transaction gap looks like. Okay, actually, let me go over here, be a little bit easier, not as much glare. Okay, so we're going to talk about the transaction gap. So what is the transaction gap? So the transaction gap is, so again, there's three gaps that exist. The first one is the intake gap, which I'm actually going to address last, because that's frankly one of the hardest for you to implement, mostly because of the mindset that exists with it. And then the second one is the transaction gap, which I'm going to discuss today. And the other one is the follow-up gap. The follow-up gap is the easiest way to improve your revenues very quickly. You can increase revenues in 30 days dramatically, like 30%. So, but let's talk about this. So there are two types of systems that you run in your medical practice. Okay. You either have an open system, and an open system means that they come in, they go through your service, maybe services, but then they spin out, never to be heard from again. Okay. Now, I had a conversation the other day with a gentleman who has a vein clinic. I also spoke with another doctor who has a weight loss practice. And those traditionally, and those that just focus on doing regenerative medicine, where it's like stem cell, and that's it. You do the procedure, you're done, hoping that maybe they might come back in a year and a half to get like an update or something like that. Those are open systems. Patient comes in, okay, prospect comes in, they become a patient, they do the thing, they leave, never to be heard from again. Okay. Now, the reason why they leave and never to be heard from again, one is the follow-up gap. Go back and watch that video. The second reason is you're not setting it up correctly in the transaction. Okay. So you're the transaction for them to become a long-term course. What you want to create is you want to create what I call a closed system. That means that they come in and they keep spinning around and around the universe. They never leave your orbit. Okay. Think of this as kind of like an asteroid flying through the solar system. This is a planet in orbit around the sun. You are the sun. Okay. So you want to create this environment where it is a closed system. And you're going to notice that the closed system, by the way, is done in green. The reason why it's done in green is that's where you make money. And the reason why the open system is done in red is that's because that's where you lose money. Okay. You're going to, at the end of the day, if you have an open system, you're going to be forever marketing. You're going to be forever running ads. You're going to be forever switching up advertising agency companies or social media companies, because you always have to get this hit. You're never going to have enough leads coming into the business. Okay. What's going to happen is you're going to just always have to live and die based on how you do that day or how that week. So let's go to this closed system. What is a closed system? Well, one of the keys in this is what is the other thing you can add? Okay. So let me go back to the ED clinics. Okay. So when we had the ED clinics, we were an open system when we started. They came in, they spun out, and yeah, they were coming back and they were buying, they had their annual medications and things like that. But our renewal rate was really, really low, and our utilization rate was really, really low. Not because the medications didn't work, not because the system didn't work, but they just weren't having as much sex as they thought they were going to have. And so what we did is we started designing this closed system. And the closed system started looking at the entire thing the entire life cycle of what it meant to be a guy who suffered from erectile dysfunction. So let me give you an example of this. I'm going to draw this out on the fly. So let me get my trusty dusty eraser here. And what we did was we created this thing called the Stairway to Sex Heaven. Okay. And I'm not going to go through the entire stairway, but basically the stairway was something like this. Exactly that. It was a stairway, and there were phases. Okay. So we had phase 1. Okay. I'm just going to write this. And then we had phase 2, and then we had phase 3. We actually had 6 steps in the stairway to sex heaven. And what we explained to our patients when they came in was that, okay, if you're not suffering from erectile dysfunction, but you're just having some performance issues, that's step 1. Then step 2, then step 3, and each step had a different protocol based on where they were. And then we showed them how we can move them up this stairway to sex heaven, what we would call sex heaven. We wanted them to be able to have great sex all the time. So it wasn't just about fixing the ED. What we also found is that a lot of these guys, 85% of our guys that came in suffered from severe low testosterone. So we created an environment where we would get them on testosterone protocols, and they would at least have to come back into the practice every 4.5 months to have the pellets inserted, which created another environment, another touch opportunity. We created an opportunity when they picked up their medications. They had to come see us. Okay. We brought them back into the room. So we created all these touch environments so that the transaction, we were deepening this relationship and we were building depth into the transaction. Okay. And it all started from their first visit. From the first time that they came in, we explained to them, look, this is not just about you getting laid. This is about you. We actually use that phrase with guys. It's not about you getting laid. This is about you having a great sex life again. Okay. And there's a lot that encompasses that. So we set that up. So how would you do this in regenerative medicine? Well, if I have bad hips and joints, there's a pretty good chance that I'm leaning towards being type 1 diabetic, or I have high blood pressure, I have high cholesterol. Why? Because I can't exercise. Okay. So what we do I'll give you a very brief example of what we do with our regenerative medicine doctors is we structure it more about treating the pain, but treating the side effects of what they've had with that pain, because most likely they're going to have low testosterone. They're probably going to have sexual performance issues. They're probably going to be overweight. They're probably going to be on high blood pressure medications, diabetes medications, pre-diabetic. All of these things are conspiring to work against them to have a fulfilled full life. So great, we fixed their joint. Big whoop. Okay. Yeah, now they can run, but they're not, but we've got to help them take care of the other issues. And so we tell them, look, this isn't just about fixing your joint. This is about fixing all the results, all the impact, all the side effects of that joint. And so what that does is we create this closed system, and it begins in the transaction. It doesn't begin after, it begins right in the room, in the transaction, and we start to lay that groundwork early. Okay. So that's the difference. And that's the benefit. You're going to start to develop deeper relationships with your patients. They're going to trust you more. And if they trust you, quite frankly, they're going to come to you for all types of advice and insight. I'm not even a doctor, and people come to me for medical insight, which I tell them I can't answer that. So here's what I want you to do. Take a look. Do you have an open or closed system? Honestly, ask that question to yourself. If you have a open system where they come in, they do the transaction, and they leave, why not message me and let's talk about how we can build a closed system so that you do not have to work as hard, that you've got a base of patients that are paying you each and every single month for services, and they love coming to see you because they're feeling better. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Look forward to getting the posts. Thanks.